Around 1985, I was looking for the perfect home in sunny California. All I wanted was a small house in a small town and a peaceful neighborhood. But the home I purchased would prove to be far from that. After weeks of searching, I found the perfect home. The house was in the city of Los Angeles. The house had a big backyard, perfect for all the animals I adopted from the shelter. I had 3 dogs and 2 cats, and one of the cats was pregnant. The first day in my new home, I noticed in the backyard there was dog fur everywhere. At first I thought it belonged to my dogs, but my dog didn't even shed much fur, and it wasn't even the color of my dog's. This was a bit strange because when I first came to see the home, there wasn't any fur in the backyard. Maybe a neighborhood dog snuck into the backyard before I came, I thought. I cleaned it up and continued unpacking. A few days passed and I found dog fur all over the house again. My dogs weren't even allowed in the house, only my cat stayed inside. Maybe they came inside somehow, I said to myself, but then again the fur wasn't even the color of my dog's. I ignored it, but as the days passed on, I kept finding fur all over the house. I didn't know what the cause of this, so I decided to ignore it. And after a while, it suddenly stopped. All was good. My cat had finally given birth to 5 little kittens. One night I invited a few friends to have drinks, and as the night took its course, one of my friends started complaining about the smell of dog. I finally smelled it, and soon we all did. It smelled like wet dog and something burnt. But there was something else mixed with it. Whatever it was one of the vilest of odors I have ever smelled. It almost made me want to vomit. Again, I was confused. It couldn't have been my dogs because they weren't even allowed inside. And I gave them showers once every week. And that did not explain the other 2 smells. After that night, the smell would occasionally come back and then leave. Something strange was going on, but I didn't know what to do or what was the cause. Just like the dog fur, the smell suddenly went away and didn't come back. I thought all of those strange occurrences had finally stopped, but I was severely mistaken. One morning I woke up to one of my kittens lying dead on the floor in front of my bedroom door. I was shocked. I had no idea what could have caused this. All of the kittens were healthy as can be. I shed a small tear and carefully walked over him. As I was making my way into the kitchen to get some cleaning tools, I saw in the living room all of my kittens on the floor, deceased. This included my 2 older cats lying dead as well. I dropped to my knees and started sobbing. Then I remembered my dogs. I quickly ran to the backyard and my dogs were perfectly fine and they happily wagged their tails at me. I let out a sigh of relief, then anger suddenly hit me. Someone or something was messing with me, and I was going to do everything possible to find out what was causing this. I started asking my neighbor if they knew anything about the previous owners, but they all didn't know the owner because my house was on sale for the longest of time. All I gathered was the last time this house had an owner was over 25 years ago, which means my house was on sale for about 25 years. This is very strange. This house was very beautiful and had a bargain of a price. Why would the house remain alone for 25 years? It didn't seem to add up. I literally asked every house in my neighborhood for information except one. The house was a home to a woman known around the neighborhood as the crazy cat lady. Her home seemed like an abandoned house. The grass was very overgrown and the paint was chipped all over. I was desperate for answers, so I tried her home. I rang the bell and no one answered. I started to turn around to leave when I heard the door squeak open. I turned around, standing in the doorway, and it was an old hag, maybe about 70 or 80 years of age, I'm not sure. Her hair was extremely long and gray, and her fingernails were long and yellow. In her arms she had a cat, and she was slowly stroking. "Yes?" she asked in a hoarse voice. I answered a bit startled. Sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you knew anything about the previous owners at the house across the street." She stared at for what seemed like hours. Then she finally answered. "Ah, yes. The house that was on sale for almost 30 years. Why don't you come in? I'll tell you all about the previous owner. As creeped out as I was, I needed the answers. I slowly entered the house. In the house were many cats. And the lady wasn't as bad as I thought. In fact, she was very nice. In about an hour, she told me about the previous owner. The previous owner was named David. He was characterized as kind around the neighborhood. David was always seen putting dogs into his home. As times passed, the neighbors started complaining about hearing whimpering and dogs constantly barking. People soon started complaining to the police. The police finally decided to go investigate the home, and what they found were dozens and dozens of dogs caged up in the backyard. The police gave David a warning and told him to find the dogs' homes. After a month, the police came back to check on David to see if he found homes for some of the dogs. David was not home, but they entered anyways. The actual house seemed completely normal, but the backyard was far from that. They found dead bodies of dogs scattered all over the yard. There was blood everywhere, and some of the dogs were hacked up with an axe, and some of them with their organs surgically removed. And some of the dogs were in the early stages of decomposition, so David must have been gone for a while. David never returned that day. The police searched day and night for him, asking people who might know his whereabouts. David was never found and has been missing since, proclaimed dead 7 years later. I could not go to sleep. After I left the old woman's home, but after hours of tossing and turning, I managed to fall asleep. Not for long, though. I woke gasping for air, as if someone was choking me. I quickly ran to my bathroom and turned on the lights. In the mirror, I saw markings on my neck. Almost looked like handprints. I was so frightened. I then heard crashing outside my door. I got a bat from my closet and stepped out of the room. Behind me, I saw the bathroom light turn off, so I tried the living room lights, but they wouldn't want to turn on. The house was extremely dark, but I managed to get around. I inspected the entire house in the dark. There was no sign of any intruder. When I entered the house in the dark, when I was heading back to my room, I had a sudden urge to turn around. I looked over my shoulder and I saw a figure of someone standing a couple feet behind me. I hung my head down and closed my eyes for a couple seconds. I finally got the courage to turn around, and in front of the backyard door was a silhouette of a man. Something told me. I knew it was David. I could barely make out the face of the man. As the silhouette and I stared at each other, I began to hear whispers, but they were not coming from the man. The whispers kept saying, "Go outside." I then knew that the silhouette was not human nor a ghost, but something far, far more evil. The silhouette moved over. I started walking towards the door. I opened the back door, but before I went inside, I turned to the man. He was right beside me. With the moonlight shining on his face, I realized his eyes was pure black and he was grinding his teeth at me. I was so very frightened, but I just walked outside and closed the door behind me. I checked the time on my watch. It read 2:34 a.m. Almost immediately, I felt a cold chill run through my body. I crossed my arms and hung my head. On the floor, I saw blood. It led somewhere. I looked over my shoulder to see if the man was still standing inside, but he was gone. I decided to follow the trail of blood. The trail led to the side of my house, and it went into the crawl space under the house, which was usually covered. The light still wouldn't turn on, so I ran inside to get a flashlight. To my surprise, it worked. Before I went in the crawl space, I realized my dogs were nowhere in sight. I took a deep breath and went in. The crawl space was extremely cold. It was covered with dirt, spider webs, and something really strange. Dog fur. As I got deeper, I saw something in the distance. The dog fur kept getting in my face, and as I crawled over to see what it was, a smell overcame me. It smelled like rotten flesh. I got close to the object and shined my light at it. It was my dogs. My dogs' mutilated bodies were placed in a triangle form. In the middle were the skeletal remains of someone. I knew it was him. I started sobbing for about a minute or two, and so I started to make my way back outside. When I turned around, I came to face to face with that man, David. He was staring at me with his evil black eyes when suddenly he opened his mouth and let out a blood-curdling scream. had no idea what happened after that. My friends say they found me laying face down in my backyard, then said I was covered with blood and claw marks. Like a dog or something had attacked me. The police recovered the human remains and confirmed they belonged to David. I never did tell anyone about what else I saw that night. Not even the old woman. And I never understood why David wanted me to find his body. And why he murdered all those dogs. I'll probably never understand. I have since moved out of the house and adopted many dogs. Maybe a little bit more than I can handle. Still, I've been trying to forget about what happened to my old house. But I kept getting this weird feeling. A feeling I keep trying to ignore, but it's still undeniably there. An urge to hurt my dogs. Maybe I should get help.